What's up, guys? Today we're going to do the passive reconnaissance. We're continuing the junior pen testing learning path. This is the first one with the network security, so we're starting to dive into a little bit more. This one, it looks like apparently, okay, I thought I was going to list them for us, but anyway, this is the first one. It's easy. You guys should be familiar with most of these tools already, so it should be an easy box for you. But if not, it's a very good introduction to network security and what you're going to expect when you're doing very simple queries. All right, so first thing, we got whois, Nslookup, dig. Those are the first three it's going to show us, and then it's going to show us some third-party tools. We already read that. Perfect. By the way, if you guys are enjoying this path, feel free to subscribe and like the videos. It helps out a ton, and we're going to keep going. I'm considering doing the Advent of Cyber, which is the Christmas event, but I'm not sure because it's every single day. So I don't know that I'd have enough time to do every single day, and I don't want to do part of it and not all of it. So, all right. So here we go, guys. So what's the difference between passive recon and active recon? So passive recon, very simple. It's like you sitting there watching someone do something, right? That's passive. I'm not doing anything. I'm not interacting with them. I'm just watching them. So if I'm watching them, I'm just sitting back. I'm not touching them. I'm not touching what they're doing. I'm not doing anything. But as soon as I go up to the building they were in and try and pick the lock, it's active now. Now I'm actively seeking. I'm going in. So how does that translate to cyber? Basically similar. Passive recon is using publicly available resources. So it'd be like me Googling your company's name or, doing DNS queries, things like that, publicly, meaning using things like Google or their type of DNS records, not actually touching your DNS server. Once I start touching your servers or querying your servers, it's now active. I'm now actively interacting with your servers at your business. So that changes things legally. So keep that in mind. It's very important that you know that because it does change things legally. All right. So here, and they show you here the example of active, connecting to the servers, calling the company in an attempt to get information. So I'm actively calling you guys. So you visit the Facebook page of the target company, hoping to get some of their employees' names. What kind of recon? So that's going to be passive because you're not actually doing anything. It's public information. It's sitting out there. You just are stumbling upon it. You're not pushing for information, basically. So you ping the IP address of the actual company so that, if you remember, that's actively seeking. You're actually touching that server that you maybe shouldn't be touching. So that is seeking information by actually actively doing it. Okay, so you happen to meet the IT admin of the target company at a party. So you happen to run into him. So far, it's not active. You try using social engineering to get more information about their systems. Now you're talking about active. Because as soon as you ran into him, that's passive. You didn't mean to. But as soon as you started probing him for information, it's now active. All right, so keep those things in mind, guys, because legally that can get hairy. All right, so whois? What is whois? So first off, whois is just basically a registration of your domain. So what that means is every time you buy a domain, right? If you buy a domain, if your company owns a domain, whatever, you actually have to register that domain so that everyone on the internet knows where it is, who owns it, that type of thing. When does it expire? This type of information is very important. Now, this may not look like a lot of information, so it's telling us right here we need to whois. So this is all it is. It's just a simple command, whois tryhackme.com, right? And we'll look at the information. Yes, we could go through here and read this to you, but you guys can do that. I don't want to read it to you. I want to try and show you guys real life scenarios. All right. So you can see here the register URL is namecheap.com. So, all right, cool. Kind of abuse namecheap.com. We have a phone number. That's interesting. We might be able to use that phone number. Let's keep scrolling. Let's look here. So it looks like the person that registered it is Namecheap Inc. So sometimes, this is obviously a large company, but sometimes you'll get an actual name here. If it's a smaller IT company or something like that, you'll get an actual name. When that happens, you have a name. Usually there's an email associated with it. When that happens, you now have a person that works there, and you have their email and their name and probably their phone number if they are the ones that registered it. So that alone is important for social engineering attacks, right? And you can see here's the registrant email. This is protected for privacy. It's withheld for privacy, but there is an email registered to this. So you can see it tells us what city they're in. That can be important. Another phone number. Another thing, see there's an admin email, and you can see it's withheld for privacy. Only large companies are going to have it withheld for privacy, most likely, because you have to have someone do that. But it's possible. It's possible that you'll run into people with withheld from privacy, and that's okay. Now, one of the big things, and you can see here, it's going to ask us, when was TryHackMe registered? All right, so we got to find out when was it registered. All right, so the updated date, creation date, so 2018. So it looks like it was only, interesting, it was only created in 2018. I didn't realize that. Okay, so 2018, 07, 05. Hopefully that's the, okay, I didn't know what format they wanted. So the reason this is important, the creation date, the update date, and the registry expiration. Number one, creation date. It could be important. It may not matter. Updated date can matter because that could mean a major change in their infrastructure. Maybe not, but it's possible. And then the big one here is the expiration date. So why is this important? So 2027. So that's a while away, right? So some companies, if they're mismanaged poorly with IT, right? What can happen is this registry expiration date can come up very quickly, right? If they aren't aware of this, or if the admin no longer works there, or whatever the case is, what people used to do, and you can still do it theoretically, but people are usually on this a little bit more, is you could buy that domain name out from under them, because if they don't extend that registration, if they let it expire, it's now publicly available. So if you buy that, now you own that domain. Let's say this is obviously never going to happen because these companies are large scale on top of their stuff. But let's say Facebook.com let their registration expire, so they're no longer registered to Facebook.com, and you buy that registration. How many people go to Facebook.com? Billions, right? So all those people are now going to go to wherever you tell them. So you can see how that becomes a huge problem. Now, I'm not saying that would happen. It definitely wouldn't happen with Facebook, but I'm just saying that does happen. People also used to own, like Facebook.com probably owns Facebook with zeros in the name instead of the O's as well, because people can trick people by using URLs that look like Facebook.com, and then they own that URL. So keep in mind that this information is important. It's just not, this isn't vital information, but what you'll see is with these tools, we're going to be building a case basically. So we would take this information, store it so we have it, and keep moving on down the line with our next tools. So what is the register of tryhackme.com? Namecheap Inc. I don't know if it's case sensitive, but nope, it's not Namecheap Inc. Okay. Unless I got the format wrong. No, it wants a dot. So, what is the register of tryhackme.com? The register is Namecheap Inc. So I'm not really sure what they want, but we'll look here. Unless they're talking about Namecheap.com. And that's what they wanted. They just wanted Namecheap.com. All right. So which company is tryhackme.com using for name servers? So that we can go down and look for the name server, and you can see it's Cloudflare, and that's going to be a common one. You guys are going to see that probably a lot. All right. So you can see we're going to gather this information, and we're going to move on to our next tools. All right. Our next tool is Nslookup and Dig. Now, you may be a little bit more familiar with Nslookup and Dig only because if you've done any troubleshooting in the past with being a sysad or netad or whatever, Nslookup a pretty common troubleshooting tool as well. All right, so Nslookup, what is it? It's just reaching out to the DNS server, whatever DNS server you're reaching out to. So you can see here they're using 11111. That's Cloudflare's. Google's 8888. Everyone usually uses, I wouldn't say everyone, Windows by default uses Google typically, which is 888. So that's why I use it. And then it shows here that Quad 9 actually uses 999 and so on. All right, so we got that. That's fine. What is DNS? DNS is simply a server that takes an IP address that you specify and links it to a name that you specify, okay? It's just a way of looking up an address. That's all it is. Now, there's different types of queries here, and these are just different types of records in DNS. So the A query, it's just an IPv4 address. If it's a newer company in large scale, they probably have IPv6 addresses, so that's or quadruple A. The C name is just that canonical name. I've never actually read that word. I've said that word. I've just read it. All right. The MX is the mail exchange server, so that's just going to be your mail servers. Start of authority, no big deal, and then the text record. So text record is just something that they can put into the records of DNS themselves. And you'll see that companies do that sometimes. They'll put a text record in there just for reference. But let's keep going. So here we have, for instance, if we look up Nslookup, and we'll just do it because it's showing us. So if we do Nslookup type A, which is just our regular IPv4, and we say tryhackme.com, and it wants us to do the 1111 but I'm going to do the 8888, and we're going to compare them and see if we get any different results. All right, so then we'll do the 1111, and this is just to show you guys that usually you're going to get pretty much the same results. You can see we have the same results, but they're backwards. No big deal, but it's the same results. So this is Google's DNS, and this is Cloudflare's. So currently, we're still using passive reconnaissance because these are public DNS records. These are not the DNS server that's actually at the company. The DNS server that's at the company holds all of the internal DNS. So what that means is if you have 50 computers sitting there and they're, you have 10 accounting, 10 customer service, and 10 sales or whatever, those all have IP addresses, but those are held in your DNS records at your company, and that stays internal. The reason for that is because if you just give everyone your IP addresses, they could find flaws very quickly. So what it is it stays internal, or it stays typically in a DMZ or something like that. And what happens is then whenever it sends a request, someone sends a request in, says, hey, I want to talk to Mark or whatever, it will come in through the DMZ, and it'll say, through your firewall and everything, and it'll say to your DNS server, hey, I want to talk to Mark. And they say, okay, Mark's over here. But they never send that IP out, okay? And that's important to know because you're not going to get a bunch of internal information from these tools because you're asking public information. All right, so now it's showing us here. We can do Nslookup, and we can get the mail exchange. So we'll get rid of the 1111, and we'll change this type to mail. And you can see they've got 5 mail servers. Interesting, okay. But this is another important key aspect here. So you can see it says all their mail servers go through google.com, okay? The reason that's important is if you are doing a pen test, right, and they say you can pen test and you can exploit all of our servers, okay, our servers. Google.com servers are not in that scope of that pen test. So you can get into legal trouble very quickly by doing pen tests on these servers because they're not theirs. They don't own them. They're renting them, basically. Okay? So keep that in mind, that you have to make sure what you're doing is inside the scope of the pen test. Okay? All right. So now it's showing us that Dig is also a tool. Dig is very similar to Nslookup, but it's going to give you a little bit more information. So we'll go tryhackme.com, MX, and boom, you see we get a little bit more information. So we get a little bit of the header. So it looks like it's giving us what flags, cool. We got the actual, looks like we have a time to live as well. And then, yeah, so it's showing us that it's UDP. Okay, cool. So we get a little bit of information, message size, that can be important. So we get a little bit more, but not a lot. It's still not a ton, right? So check the text records for TMH Labs. Okay, so we'll do dig thmlabs.com, and they said they want text records, so we'll do txt. Boom, and there's our flag. So obviously you're not going to get a flag in real life, but people do put in their text records information. They might have a server that they know of that they want in there just for reference or something like that. That may not be normally something people go to, and you find it, and all of a sudden you can go to it. All right, so 027.297 1E. I feel like I missed something, but 438D78. All right, got it right. So now DNS dumpster. So for some reason, this attack box won't let me go to it. I don't know if it's the VPN or what, but so DNS dumpster. So what is this? This is just going to give you a lot more information on it, and I'll show you. We'll skip that, and we'll go through these. So it says, look up tryhackme.com on DNS dumpster. What is one interesting domain? So tryhackme.com. We'll search it, and we'll go through it. So here we go. So you can see here, we're going to get the same DNS servers that we got before. Those are owned by Cloudflare, which we already knew because when we did the whois, it told us who their name servers were going through. The mail records, we already had those 5 from the other ones. And you can see here on this DNS dumpster, you can do some cool stuff. You can get the headers. You can attempt a zone transfer. So a zone transfer is a DNS attempt where you go to their DNS server and say, hey, I'll give you all my information. You give me all yours. Let's trade, right? Now, nowadays, you'll be surprised, or I'd be surprised if you get one to work on large-scale companies. But on a smaller company, they may not understand what they're supposed to be doing to lock that down, and it may just give it to you, and that happens, okay? And then you can see here, find hosts sharing this DNS server, and search for banners, and then in-map port scan. So keep in mind, you notice it says here for you, they all say passive. Oh no, that one says active. I didn't read that one. Sorry. Trace path, attempt zone transfer active. You notice so they all say active actually. So you notice they say passive and active. So keep that in mind when you're doing it because that's telling you where you're standing legally and also where you're standing with what you're doing, okay? Now, if we keep going down, these are the text records, okay? Google site verification, okay, nothing important. Email.chargeb.com could be important, but here's a big one. Remote.tryhackme.com and blog.tryhackme.com. We didn't know those existed before. So now it's asking us here, what is one interesting subdomain? And remote, because that would typically mean there's remote access, and that's how you get in, okay? So keep that in mind. You can find different subdomains, and those can usually be pretty interesting. All right, so now most of you guys should know about Showdown IO. If you don't, prepare to be mind blown because it is very, very useful and very, very powerful tool. So Showdown IO, what is it? It is a web crawler, okay? It always is looking on the internet through all the IPs, and it's saying, okay, so let's say we wanted to find an SSH vulnerability. All we gotta do is put port 22, which is SSH, hit enter, and look at how many different port 22s, 469,000, are facing the internet. Meaning those ports are open right now, okay? So that's dangerous, right? Especially if you have a vulnerable port. You can search for specific vulnerabilities in this, and it will give you a list of hosts that you can do it with. Now, I say this very cautiously because this is where you get yourself in trouble. If you start finding these hosts and actively seeking information from them, you're doing something illegal typically. Depends where you live, your state, your laws, all that stuff. All right, so what is Showdown IO? We covered that. So according to Showdown IO, what is the second country in the world in terms of number of publicly accessible Apache servers? So if we type Apache, hit enter, if it loads. All right, so you can see here we have 25 million results. Looks like top countries, United States, then Germany. So let's type Germany. That's the second, yep. So now what is the third most common port used for Apache? So Apache is a web server if you guys don't know. So Apache, 8080, so perfect. And we could have guessed the top ports would be 80 and 443. 8080 is a good one. A lot of people use it. Based on Showdown IO, was the third most common port used for Nginx. So if you guys don't know what that is, it's just typically it can be used for a couple things, but it's usually a load balancer type tool. Okay, the first one's in United States, Hong Kong, and China. All right. I'm sorry. I was looking at countries. It's asking for the port. What is the third most common port? 8888. Perfect. Done and done. All right, guys, and that's it. So I'll let you guys mess with Showdown yourself. I don't want to dive too deep into that because you could do a whole video on Showdown itself. But I want you guys to do it, and I want you guys to mess around with it and have fun with it, because these tools are all passive reconnaissance. It's when you start diving deeper that you're going to start getting active. So you can do these on sites and have fun with them. Just be careful and make sure you're not actively seeking any information without permission. Hopefully you guys liked it. If you did, hit that sub button. If you enjoyed this video specifically, go ahead and like it. And we're going to keep going with this same network path and the junior pen testing path. So thanks, guys.